want to get back to China and certainly North Korea in a moment, but as the person who led the CIA effectively for so many years yourself, what are your thoughts of Gina Haspel?
She's a career CIA officer. Spent almost 30 years in the CIA. She worked for me when I was director of the CIA. I found her to be extremely competent, and dedicated, and committed. I support her nomination to be head of the CIA. I think she has presented strong testimony about how she feels about torture and the fact that she would never implement that kind of approach again. And so I hope that the senators look at the full context of her career, her testimony today, and hopefully will support her getting that nomination.
There were a lot of questions around the torture and the interrogation programs, even around the morality of it. What are your thoughts about that?
Well, I share the concerns about the morality of some of those methods, particularly on water torture, which is torture, as far as I'm concerned. And I believe that we have taken the right step to move away from those enhanced procedures and to implement the approach that the FBI implements, that the military implements. I mean, that's the approach we should have taken a long time ago. So I think we're in the right place. I think we're sending the right signals to the world about our values. And I hope that both the President and the CIA and others will stand by what she said today, which is that the United States has to stand by the values that we represent.
But we've had, and this is the point that she made today, we've had 17 years to look at what went on after 9/11 and digest it and think it through. Was it the right move at the time?
Well, you know, that's a good point, Maria, because I have always felt, not having been director of the CIA at that time, that in order to judge people that were involved at that time, I think we have to look at the context of what was happening on 9/11. We got attacked, Trade Center's towers came down, we had a plane crash in a field in Pennsylvania, we had a plane go into the Pentagon. There were rumors about whether or not there would be a nuclear weapon someplace in Washington, D.C. I mean, you know, I understand in that context the need to try to get as much information as we could about the threats that were out there. But at the same time, I think it's important for us to understand that the United States, our strength lies in our values and what we represent. And I think that when we're threatened, we have to ask ourselves first and foremost, what does the United States stand for? And should we abide by what we believe is the right thing to do?
And of course, there are a whole new set of challenges today that Gina Haspel may face. What would be your advice should she be confirmed?
I think the most important job for her is to speak truth to power, which means gather the intelligence, find out what's going on, present that information to the President and to other policymakers in the White House, and don't be afraid to tell them the truth. That's always a problem sometimes when you know how policymakers want to go and the intelligence may not necessarily support them. So don't be afraid to tell truth to power, and don't be afraid to support the people at the CIA who are out there risking their lives in order to get that kind of information.